All right, I'm going to go ahead and take a call from John, a chap out of Florida, who's asking, is religion needed for morality? John, you're on AXP with Hemant Mah and Johnny P. And I want to turn the question to you. Do you think that that religion is needed for morality?
I personally do not.
Why?
I would, that's kind of, let's see. Sorry, I'm kind of shaking up a little bit right now.
I can jump in while you
go ahead.
gather your thoughts there. I mean, John, I share your belief that it's not necessary for morality. I think if you look, I mean, Phil Zuckerman, the sociologist, has written quite a bit about this, but basically there are plenty of countries that have very little, their citizens have very little belief in God and organized religion. And yet, depending on what metric you want to use to measure morality, those countries seem to be doing pretty damn well, regardless of which thing you are choosing, whether it's human rights, whether it's marginalized people and the support they get, whether it's healthcare, their beliefs about trans people, the death penalty. I mean, pick your poison there. The countries that have the littlest belief in organized religion are also arguably the most moral. So we're seeing it play out in real time that you don't need religion much. I mean, at least organized religion, you don't need for people to behave in a way that suggests they want to make the world a better place, that they want to help people who are not themselves. The argument that you need God to be good is just broken all the time. I mean, we're all coming from the United States here, where the people who believe in God, who are also in positions of power, tend to be doing the things that hurt a lot of the most vulnerable people in our country. So, I mean, there's the flip side of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
John, so you got something you want to add to that?
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm coming from. Like, I mean, we're all in the U.S. of A. and it's a pretty Christian foundation here, it's kind of like I'm in a huge debate. I guess I don't know as much as I would like to know about morality and all of that, and that's really why I'm kind of calling, just to kind of get some feedback or some.
I think the thing I really want to know, John. Sorry, not to cut you off there. That's the lag. But I guess the question it really depends is, how do you want to define morality? Because there's so many different ways of doing that. And if you can, I mean, there's so much data out there that suggests you don't need religion to be moral, but it all goes back to, how do you want to define morality? Because the way a lot of conservative Christians define it, I would agree, are not moral answers. I mean, we just talked about abortion rights a second ago. I would argue that's a moral situation, to put the patient to give power to the patient, to give power to the women. But plenty of conservative Christians would argue that doesn't matter. So it's a hard question to answer without knowing what you want to use to define morality. And until you can hammer that one down, until you can nail that one down, it's really hard to give a straight answer in any sort of debate with whoever you're trying to argue this with.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I'll need to re-examine my question and maybe come at it with more of a specific side before making any real decisions or calling back in.
Yeah, I will say, like I said, from what I've read, and I really enjoy everything Zuckerman writes about this thing. If you Google his name, Phil Zuckerman, and morality, religion, you'll find this. You'll find articles and stuff about this. But again, if you want to say that morality is helping other people, nations that are less religious do a lot more of it. If you want to argue that people who are not religious donate to charity, if you're saying church is not a charity, but everything else might be like, we give as much as religious people do. Religious people might have a better infrastructure in place to make that happen, but it's not that people without religion are any less generous. So again, yeah, it goes back to how you want to define morality, but I think you'd be hard pressed to find any definition of it where religious people are found to be more moral when the playing field is even.
If I might say something here, I've been thinking about this lately. That religious morality, let's say Christian morality. Let's talk about Jewish morality. Okay, there's no promise of an afterlife in Judaism necessarily, right? That deeds are considered moral or immoral insofar as it affects the community of the chosen people, right? And God has laid out, and the rabbis and leaders have laid out a course of action, a course of measurements, standards by which these behaviors are considered moral or immoral. The law, or the concept of the law. This is you say it's agreed upon, but there's an element of divine revelation and divine cogitation, right, that goes into it. Christianity takes it a step further and kind of changes it, because the kingdom of God is not on earth permanently. It's the body of the believers, and the goal is to get you to heaven, where you'll have your real life, right? And I think that's where we see differences between a humanist, secular sense of morality and the religious, the Christian morality, where there is a goal of getting people to heaven, not necessarily a goal of getting people to live necessarily good lives here. To some degree, yes, but to a large degree, no. And that's how I think religious people are able to say that certain things are, even though we might have data, even though we might see how certain positions on moral issues may benefit actual living humans, they would still be considered immoral for purposes of a Christian worldview. Okay, so you might see, like, let's say, homosexuality, and amongst certain nations, probably a majority of the world, but maybe not all the world, certainly not all the world, people can, consenting adults can get involved in homosexual relationships, and they are free to do so, and there are certain protections in place. Whereas certain Christian denominations would say this is sin. By making this behavior acceptable, we are allowing people to sin. Therefore, we must prevent this behavior from taking place. We must limit this behavior, make it hard to be homosexual, and because we're concerned with their eternal souls, their eternal lives. And so the morality has a different end game, secular versus a religious-based one, right? I think Islam probably falls in the same category as well, because you go to, I don't know, Muslim heaven. I don't know. Talk to some of our other hosts about that. So I think that, just to put a knot in it, we talked about concepts of human happiness or flourishment. We talk about this a lot on the show. And I'd just like you to take a look at it from the religious person's perspective, with an eye on the eternal life that we don't know exists, versus the secular person who is looking at the world we actually live in right now. And take a look at how religious people's morality may differ from secular person's morality. You might see that those moral stances are based upon that goal as opposed to a secular goal. Thoughts?
You know, that makes a lot of sense. I really appreciate that answer, actually. So I'll definitely have to check into this Phil Zuckerman, Zuckerman.
Zuckerman, yeah.
Just to kind of, yeah, I really appreciate what you all said, and for the reference, I definitely will be calling back at some point to kind of, tackle this a little more head on.
Yeah, please do.
Please
do. You take care, John. All right. Well, we know we've got a few more super chats.
Yeah.
Hemant, could you take that?
Sure. From Brandon, who gave $5, says, big fans of you both, podcaster in the Bible Belt. Curious if you have advice starting free thinking or atheist groups in areas like these. So the good news is that if you're in the Bible Belt, I would argue anecdotally that you probably have better odds of finding or starting atheist groups in these places, because there's a need for them. If you're trying to start one up, it's really just a matter of having, I would argue, the thing you need more than anything, whether it's you or whether it's someone else, is having someone willing to take the lead And it doesn't require that much. It means posting meetup dates, planning a place where you can all get together. It could be a restaurant, it could be someone's place, wherever a public place is usually safe. But then getting that information out there and then just making sure there's something to do. Not everyone can meet at a bar. Not everyone
Mm.
has the money to go to a restaurant. So diversifying where you meet, what you do, that helps a lot. But if you are in the Bible Belt, odds are there are people looking for that sort of stuff. And if they can find that it's happening with a search online, just put the information out in as many venues as you can, whether it's Facebook, Meetup, whatever ways you can get the word out there. Make sure you are checking with national groups you might be familiar with to see if they have members in the area who they could send a blast out to. But if you can get the information out there at colleges as well, um, if you can get the information out there, you might be surprised at who you find and who they tell about this stuff. But I would also say, make sure that you are doing everything you can to make it a welcoming place that accepts people, doesn't have distractions or people who are going to scare everyone off. But years ago, I worked with a group that helped launch atheist groups at college campuses, and we found that we had the most success in typically red states because those college students had like
Mm.
70 options for Christian groups on campus and 0 options if they were non-religious. So the second there was a solid group in place to offer them a home, they really went for it. They wanted to talk about these issues with people who weren't going to judge them negatively for it. I suspect that's the same outside of college too. So good luck to you.
Yeah.
There's also
Oh, real quick,
Pat. Yes.
Secular Student Alliance over at UTSA, University of Texas, San Antonio. We had a work with them on a regular basis. Much love. Hope to see you all very soon. But that's a group. That's exactly the story that they have.